Today on MuscleCar, Tommy picks up our newest project and shows how to smartly trailer your ride. The king of Grand Nationals shows why it's #1. And Rick goes through the ins and outs of spraying metallic paint.
Hey guys, welcome to MuscleCar. Today we're out and about fixing to pick up our latest project. I think you're going to like it. We get tons of requests for us to put one of these things together, so we figured we'd give you guys what you want. Not only are these cars affordable, but the parts availability is through the roof on them. We've eyeballed a few classifieds and a couple of websites. I believe we found us a good candidate. That's right, a Fox body Mustang. This thing fell straight out of the 80s. The carpet's dry, it don't leak. Looks like it's lacking something under here. Get rid of this little slow-go box and put in something much bigger.
3.8 liter, that's a small 6-cylinder, right?
Yes, sir. Lines on it, it ain't never been wrecked, or if it has, it wasn't bad.
Well, everybody that comes in here, what they're trying to do is put a 5.0 in it. Is what the intent is.
These cars are always abused. If it's the 302, you know, the 5.0 or something like that, people out jerking gears in it, which that's our plans. But this one, at least we're starting with a good canvas to begin with. So.
Well, they say that there's a lot of these out there, but there's very few that are T-top.
It being a T-top car, we're gonna have to brace it up good because we're gonna put some pretty decent power at it. And these old cars already flex. With a T-top car, it's gonna flex that much more. But we're gonna put it on a severe diet, lighten this thing up, put some good power under it. Billy here seems to be a pretty honest guy with a pretty solid car. And he's only asking $1,100. Mind if I drive it?
Don't mind at all. We'll take her for a spin, there the key.
She's a bit smoky, but it seems to drive pretty darn well. Not too bad, actually. I think you're looking at our next project car. Now, I ain't risking trying to drive this thing back home, so I'm going to trailer it. Now, I'm no old fella, but in my time of hauling some cars around, I've seen some people do some silly stuff when it comes to tying the car down to the trailer. This is exactly what you don't want to use. You notice this particular ratchet strap is melted, frayed, and almost broken. So what that means is when you pull this car down and you're driving down the road and you got to get in the brakes or something happens, this is going to snap and your car's going to fall off. You could kill somebody, or yourself, or a dog. When you're hooking on the front, make sure you're using a nice solid structural piece like a frame hole or an A-arm. No tie rod ends or valances. On the rear, use an axle strap. Just watch out for the brake line. And when you bind this down, you've got to have material in here. Because if it's just looped once, it can actually back up. This way, when it pulls down, as it's all wrapped up, it's got friction against it. Keeps it from unraveling. I like to tie the rear in an X pattern because it evens out the geometric forces of the straps. The DOT man won't be happy if you got all your straps blowing around every which way. Tie them down. Now with our Mustang, parts are pretty much available from the front bumper to the back. But if you was hauling in something a little more rare, be sure to bring along a roll of tape. This stuff will make sure that if you got a loose piece of trim, you can tape it down and it'll make its way back to the shop. Me and old Smokey are headed back toward the shop. See you guys there.
Still ahead, we begin the teardown on our Project Pony. Plus, more 80s muscle when we take a look at a cherry GNX.
Mustang GT, for people who want more out of life.
From 1979 to 93, the Fox body platform was Ford's offering to the Mustang lovers. Over the years, they offered a wide range of options, including the popular GT model. With 14 years on the market, this is one of the longest running car platforms of any American model, which means they're plentiful. And with a performance background, upgrades are easy to find, which is one reason we chose one of these cars for our next project. The plans for this car are simple. Number one, affordability. Not everybody's got some huge chunk of change laying around to throw at some project. Number two, accessibility. A lot of the stuff we're going to do to this car can be done in a driveway or in a garage if you have one. Number three, drivability. Not only is this thing going to walk the dog, but it's got to pass the emission sniff test when we're all said and done.
Now basically, we want a fast, low-buck, do-it-yourself daily driver, but the first part of that statement is fast, and this little girl is about 2 cylinders shy of what we need.
Just throw it. All this stuff right here is going in the scrapper, because we're going to swap it out for a stroker motor, but we're going to drop all the engine stuff out the bottom along with the suspension and the K-member, transmission, all in one big hunk.
The technical term for most of the stuff that we're removing here would be called lame and unneeded. So that means that we can pretty much hack it out of the way.
So we got a few little odd ends that we're going to undo or cut, get out of the way. Drop all this, get the body up, get him busy. Normally you wouldn't use a pry bar to remove a spring, but with this, all the spring tension has pretty much been removed. So just be sure to hold on to it. That's all it is. I'm gonna remove these 4 bolts that hold the cradle in, lift the body up with the lift. Motor, cradle, all be laying there on them jack stands.
Say bye-bye to this poor, sick little Mustang embarrassment.
With the engine all out of the way, I can start stripping off the firewall of all the stuff we're not going to use. Then we're going to clean it up and throw in a splash of duplicolor to dress it up a bit.
We're using a shop vac, some soapy water, and a little dab of brake cleaner to get the grime off the surface that we're going to paint. Now, we're not building a show car here. We're building a daily driver. So I'm going to mask off the engine compartment, paint around a few things, and move on.
That's about all we can do until we get on the phone and order up a few parts for this old girl. Our next step is slapping in a V8.
Yeah, she's also going to need new suspension, wheels and tires and brakes. And Tommy's got to rebuild the rear end for it. Then it's going to get shot black and charcoal gray.
And when we're all said and done, this thing's going to look downright evil. And that's why we chose the name Dark Horse for this project. But there ain't much to do until I get those parts headed this way.
Going fast with class. That's how they roll with this blacked out Buick. Plus, how to avoid tiger striping metallic paint. Stick around. Today's flashback, a 1987 Buick GNX.
All across the country, guys love racing their Buicks. And their motto?
Going fast with class.
I like racing Grand Nationals because you can make so much power with a V6.
When it comes to mean, modern muscle cars, the GN is in a class all its own. And the ultimate GN? Oh, well, that title belongs to the limited edition 87 GNX.
The GNX is just a good-looking, classy ride.
Buick only made 547 of these bad beauties, and they came in one color, black. This car right here, well, it's number 31 off the production line, and it's owned by Buick lover Michael Norman.
Driving a GNX is totally different than any other Grand National out there. It's got so much more torque from the bottom end up. It just really gets up and going.
The GNX was only available in 1987. Buick was retiring the Grand National that year and wanted to send it off with a bang. So they partnered with ASC McLaren to produce a more powerful version and dubbed it the GNX. Lurking under that hood is the standard turbo V6 engine. But it's been enhanced with the Garrett T3 turbocharger, which has a lighter turbine wheel made of ceramic. The turbo could produce up to 15 pounds of boost, giving this engine 276 horsepower. It's an increase of 31 horse over the standard GN. All this extra power meant it needed greater cooling capacity, so a new intercooler with more fins per row was added. The suspension also got beefed up with a rear panhard bar and ladder bar to handle all that extra torque. Buick also added larger 16 by 8-inch alloy wheels with a black mesh design. Fender flares were enlarged to handle the wider tires, and louvers were added to help remove heat from the engine bay. The inside looks like a GN, except for the sleek Stewart Warner analog gauges, and only GNXs had a special plaque embossed with a production number, fitted above the glove box door. Another way to spot a true GNX is to check out the vehicle emission tag under the hood. Instead of saying General Motors, it should say ASC Inc. It may surprise you, but the GNX was the fastest production car in 1987. It even beat out the Corvette.
It was a true sleeper car back in its day.
Thanks to its incredible performance, power, and limited edition status, the GNX is a highly sought after and very collectible car. But that's not stopping Michael from having a little fun.
If I want to have a car, I'd rather get out and drive it. If I can't drive it, I'd rather have a picture on the wall.
Prepping and painting for a great metallic finish. Still ahead. You're watching MuscleCar. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own MuscleCar collection, delivered right to your door from the PowerBlock.
Hey guys, it's time to zip up your paint suits and bolt on your listening ears, because this week we're going to show you the ins and outs of spraying metallic paints. And we'll show you a few of the do's and don'ts of applying that type of finish. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Prep work makes the paint job, and especially if you're dealing with a high metallic finish, it's critical what grit you use for the final prep. Now I've got some 320 grit here, which is way too coarse for finish sanding just about anything, especially silver metallics. Now, I'm going to sand this side with 320 and this side with 600. That way you can see what a big difference it makes. I think that's good enough to make a point. Now I'm going to jump over to the 600 grit. It takes more swiping with the 600, but it's well worth it. If you notice, the hood that we're using here has been pre-dented. That's because we ran by LKQ and picked it up, because they sell their dent and scratch hoods for cheap. And it's an easy way to grab some sheet metal to play around with without having to work on a family car. The silver base is going to show those sanding scratches pretty dang well. Now, it's really easy to tiger stripe with metallic paint, but we'll get to that in a minute. And you can already see the sand scratches starting to come through over here on the 320 grit side, as opposed to the 600 grit side, which is nice and smooth and consistent. Now this is the difference that can be made with just a change in grits. It can literally make or break a paint job. I'm throwing down a nice coat of sealer to give us a clean canvas. This will wipe out all those scratches so I can show you our next trick. Now, I mixed up a little champagne color here because it'll contrast nicely with the gray sealer that I just laid down, and it'll really show how easy it is to tiger stripe this stuff. Take a look at the spray pattern. I've set it like this to show you what happens when the paint is too concentrated on a narrow line. When your spray pattern is inconsistent, it pushes the metallic deeper into the base coat than it does in other areas. That's why you have these dark lines and light lines. Now I'm going to go the opposite direction and turn my pressure up really high and widen the fan, which creates a split pattern. As you can see, it did just as good a job of striping this hood as having the pattern too tight. So basically, I've shown you guys the two extremes of the gun setup. There's a pattern that's way too narrow, and you got the pattern that's way too wide and way too much pressure. I can see that one's going to give you one stripe. This one's going to give you two stripes. The object is to find a happy medium in between those two with a nice consistent pattern. Here we go. Beautiful. Doesn't get any better than that. That just shows you can have the best gun, the best paint, and the best booth in the world, but if it's not set up right, it's gonna look like it belongs in the zoo, man. Hey, if you have any questions about anything you saw on the show today, you can check it out at PowerBlockTV.com. But for this week, we're out of time. So until next time, we're out of here.